I know. I just couldn't leave well enough alone. It's a character flaw. I was probably born with it. Hi guys, so before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other reviews of Stephen King adaptations in my Stephen King playlist, although this film has very little to do with the great man himself. We are very much into the post-King era of the Mangler franchise. In fact, initially I decided not to cover the sequel, so I did the original Mangler a few weeks ago, and then I moved on. I moved to The Boogeyman, another night shift thing. But then I came across the titles for the Mangler sequels again, and I thought to myself, the Mangler 2 Graduation Day, what is that all about? How are they going to get a killer laundry machine into a school or a university? And then I thought, well, maybe it's a boarding school and they buy the Mangler and set it up in the basement as being the thing that washes the kids' clothes throughout the week. And then I thought, well, maybe it's actually the horse going to the water, or would that be vice versa? Maybe this film will take place in the laundromat again, but there's a local school that needs a venue for graduation day and they've left it too late to get any of the good places, so it's a case of the headmaster standing up in assembly and saying, look, sorry, this was the best we could do at short notice, so just behave yourselves when you're there, don't touch any of the machinery, and Biff, don't put any whiskey in the punch this year. But turns out that it's neither of these things that was swirling through my mind as a possibility. This film has nothing to do with the killer machine from the original Mangler. So first time around, we had a killer laundry press that was possessed by a demon. This time around, we have an AI security system that's been taken over by a black market virus. Like, the two evils are completely different. So this film is very much out of the Halloween 3 Season of the Witch mold. It's got nothing to do with the film before it, which I found a little bit disappointing because I was looking forward to seeing how it all tied into the first film, but not to worry. So just to give you a bit more about the plot, so we've got a bunch of kids going back to school after spring break, only to discover that the headmaster has put in this AI system. It's on loan from a corporation. They're using the school as a kind of guinea pig, and if it all goes well, then the system can then be sold to other places in the United States. So the kids see all these cameras all over the place. All the doors have got swipe cards now. The AI controls the temperature of the rooms, right down to ordering the food for the kitchens. The AI performs that function as well. So it's very invasive. The system is called N2K, which just shows you the era that this film came out in. This came out in 2002, although presumably it would have been written at least 2 or 3 years before that. So the writer definitely had the Y2K bug in mind. These days, 2024, you won't get any fictional AI that has 2K in the title of it. We've just moved on from that, but there are other clues, big ones, that this film came out in 2002. There's the music, which I'll come back to, but also the level of gore. So there are lots of violent things happening in this film, but we always seem to cut away before the really juicy stuff is shown. Now, partly that might be a budgetary thing, but also I think that it's just the fact that it's 2002, you know, the stabilizers hadn't quite come off the bike in horror just after the millennium. We were still a little bit of time away from Saw and Hostel. Horror was still gaining its confidence in terms of going all out, and that moment had certainly not arrived when The Mangler 2 came out. So it's first day of term. All the kids are being sent away on a geography trip, which is very convenient. It's been a long time since I was at school. I don't remember ever going on a trip first day of term. That just wouldn't happen. But we know why the writers are doing this, don't we? It's so that they don't have to kill hundreds of people in the same horror film. Halloween H2O did the same thing. Everybody buggered off on a trip, just as Michael Myers showed up. Although I'll give The Mangler 2 some credit. We see way more of the school in this film than we did in Halloween H2O, a much bigger budget horror film, much more mainstream film. There are 5 kids in this who are not going on the geography trip because they've been naughty, so they have to stay behind, and there's a few staff members who aren't going as well. So we've got like maybe 9 or 10 potential victims, but it's not the actual AI system that's at fault here. The system itself is fine. A lot of the time in a film like this, a corporation, a greedy firm will come up with this system, but they won't put enough money into making it safe, and there'll be glitches and deaths will occur because of that. But this system in this film is absolutely fine. Credit to the corporation that came up with it. It works. The reason why things go wrong is because this snotty-nosed teenage girl decides to download a virus called the Mangler, and suddenly the AI is murderous and trying to kill people in any way that it can, and thus our horror film can begin in earnest. It might be a surprise to you to learn that I enjoyed this slightly more than the Mangler one, and I liked the Mangler one to a point, so I definitely got more than I expected with this. I put it on a Saturday morning because I didn't want it to be my Saturday night movie, so I ended up sat there just after I'd had my breakfast watching it on my phone thinking, let's just get this out of the way by lunchtime. But there came a point in this quite close to the end where I thought to myself, this has actually gone quite quickly for me, and I've kind of liked it actually. I mean, if you take away the fact that it's just cashing in on the Mangler name in a really cynical way, this is still a pretty good movie about a bunch of teens trying to survive some dangerous AI. It's reasonably well made for the most part, and it does give you a good bit of horror enjoyment. At least if you can get past how silly the AI's capabilities are. I mean, it can make wires come out of machines, move around in the air, wrap around people's necks and lift them off the ground. At one point, it makes wires move around and grab hold of the handle of some garden clippers, and then the clippers are used as a weapon on somebody. You know, wires are going all over the place in this film, like it's the end of Silent Hill with that razor wire that was going here, there and everywhere. So it is a little bit unrealistic here in terms of what the computer can do. But then again, if this had been a film with more realistic AI in it, I don't think the threat level would have been anywhere near the same. I mean, what could real-life AI do to people in a building like a school? I guess it could try and electrocute someone if they put their hand on a doorknob, or maybe it could try and trap somebody in a room and turn the temperature up to unbearable levels. But if the human beings were aware of the danger, then I think it would be quite easy for them to survive a dangerous AI. The computer would be hugely disadvantaged by the fact that it has no proper physical presence, if you see what I mean. I mean, if you asked me what would I rather try and survive, a slasher killer or a rogue AI, I'd pick the AI in about 2 seconds flat without even blinking. But I'm not sure I would choose it if it was the AI from this movie, because it can do daft things like moving wire in the air all over the place and stuff like that. I love the way that the AI manifests its personality onto a screen in this. It comes up with its own little AI head that starts talking on a monitor at one point. Reminds me of Kane from RoboCop 2, when you see him on a screen just talking after he's become a complete robot. And I think at the end of the film, after RoboCop's killed him, you just see Kane going when he's dying. But sadly, you don't get that at the end of this movie, which would have been fun. The absolute best moment in this film is right near the end, and I'm going into spoiler territory now, so if that bothers you, if you don't want spoilers for Mangler 2 Graduation Day, then look away now. If you're not bothered though, stay with me. So the final girl goes into the main terminal room. I guess this would be called like the Queen's Chamber if it was a Resident Evil movie or something, the Red Queen's Chamber. And she comes across Lance Henriksen being held up by wires. So yeah, Henriksen's in this movie, a real coup for something like this. And he's really good. He's playing the headmaster, but he's captured by the AI, and the AI is basically using him like a puppet. I mean, literally with like it's as if he's got strings. His arms and legs are being moved around by these wires, and the AI is talking through Henriksen to the final girl. And because Henriksen's voice is so incredibly awesome, this conversation between the final girl and the Henriksen bot, if you want to call him that, is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It was creepy as hell. That being said, the way that the final girl then kills the AI is totally stupid. So she's got this disc with another virus on it that will kill the machine. And obviously I'm paraphrasing now, but she says something like, oh, so I've got this disc with like snowflakes and stuff on it, and if you put this disc in you, you'll learn more about the world and nature, and it'll just help you just enrich yourself, and you'll be better placed to then take over the world and stuff. And yeah, just take this disc, it won't do you any harm, honest. And the Henriksen bot is like, okay, lay it on me. And that's literally how the machine dies, I think. So yeah, that's a bit a bit lame after the film we've had up to that point. I think I would have preferred it if the final girl had discovered a grenade launcher just conveniently lying around in the hockey equipment shed, and then she could have blown apart the terminals that way. That would have been no less silly, but infinitely more satisfying. I had been going to say that the characters are pretty atrocious in this, until I remembered that there is one good one, and I refer to the school chef. So this is clearly a human being who has grown up thinking that eventually he would end up partnering Jamie Oliver in some really high-quality New York restaurant, but he's actually ended up in some random high school serving slop day in, day out, and he's just getting to the age now where he's realising that this is never going to change, so he's become really cynical. And I just enjoyed his really defeatist personality throughout this movie. But the actual teens themselves are awful. The worst thing about this movie, whoever wrote this clearly has no idea how teens actually talk to each other. So in this, they're constantly sort of flirting with each other, but in this really kind of non-committal, unrealistic way. It just feels off, and at times I felt like these characters are surely high on weed or something like that, but I don't think that was the intention. This script really needed to be polished up by somebody who understands how young people talk to each other, because this is clearly not it. There's this one girl, her name comes up at the start of the film as Daniela Evangelista, and as soon as I heard that, I thought to myself, I've heard that name, this is a famous actress, and yet I can't picture her. But it turns out, no, I was thinking of Linda Evangelista, the model. So I'd never heard of Daniela Evangelista. Actually, it just so happens that she has a recognisable surname. Now, this actress is playing the second most important teen, i.e. the blonde who is a bit more sexually active than the final girl, and of course she is doomed to die. But for some reason, she's walking around in this film with just a bra on. She's clothed from the waist down, but up top she's just got a bra on. And I'm thinking, why is that? There's no reason why this girl would not have a top on. Now, in Die Hard, I get it as to why Bruce Willis is running around barefoot. You can clearly see that when the terrorists turn up, he has no chance to put his socks and shoes on before he bolts for the stairs. But the Mangler 2 makes no attempt to even show this girl like locked out of her room so that she can't nip back in and get a top. She's just out socialising around the school with just a bra on, and it's just a little bit cynical. I mean, I know why they've done it from a writer's perspective, because this actress, it just so happens that she's quite well endowed in a certain area, but God knows what the actress herself thought about it. I suppose if you're willing to do the Mangler 2, then you're in a frame of mind where you're up for anything, I suppose. And she's not completely naked. There are a couple of really bad teenage deaths in this where I just had to shake my head at the utter stupidity. So throughout the film, the AI has got the outer fence electrified, but somebody drives through it with a car towards the end, and the characters who are left start to scramble across this downed fence. But this one boy, he stops halfway across and starts jumping up and down on the fence going, oh, yes, it's actually not electrified. Yes, we're safe now. We can cross it. A bit like that kid in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He's like, oh, look, strong wood, strong wood. But of course, the AI has not been completely knocked out at this point. It's taken a hit, but it's recovering itself. And so as this kid is bouncing up and down, being really complacent, suddenly the fence re-electrifies and completely zaps this kid to death. I mean, he was so close to getting clear and being available for the Mangler 3, but that's not going to happen now. There's another death as well. So the kids are running through this gym. It's kind of like a basketball-themed sort of gym, I suppose. But there's these like retractable seats on the wall. Now, we don't have these in the UK because we're not posh enough. But in America, I've seen this in quite a few films. They've got these seats. Are they called bleachers? And what happens is you'll push a button and the seats will like unfurl themselves, and there's like usually like 7 or 8 rows, and then if you push the button again they'll retract back into the wall. But it's clearly like an electrified system. So in a film like this, if you just happen to drop your flashlight between the seats as you're running down them, would you really go behind the seats to retrieve said flashlight? No, of course you wouldn't. But this one kid decides to quickly go behind there, and of course the AI makes the seats close in and he gets completely squidged. We don't see enough of that, sadly. That would have been nice. Can't believe I just said that. But yeah, so at least 2 deaths in this where I just found myself unable to believe the lack of intellect among these teens. I will finish off with a positive though, and that's the soundtrack. So this has a kind of a really techno sort of beat soundtrack. You saw quite a lot of soundtracks like this around the turn of the millennium. Horror tried to sort of modernise itself a little bit, but with this soundtrack, it's like some random person's just putting these tunes together in their bedroom on the fly. They're not spending too much time on them. But there's one part of the beat where you just hear this random voice going, "I've got the funk and the funk is in your body. I've got the funk and the funk is in your body. I've got the funk." It's like the worst written line you've ever heard in your life, but it really made me laugh. And I've been meaning to actually boot up the Mangler 2 soundtrack on YouTube since I watched this movie, just so I could hear this stuff again, because it's just so unintentionally hilarious. Now, I don't have a copy of this movie to show you, but I do have a new dog. This is Autumn. She's a cockapoo, and she's only 10 weeks old. She's a little puppy, and she's just getting used to being in the family. And this week, I've already had her watching Maniac Cop 3 and Carlito's Way, which I think she really enjoyed. So, I don't know, maybe we'll see more of her on the channel going forwards. But for now, let's get to the bag of terror and see how we're going to score this thing. So, we've got 1, 2, 3 bloody axes out of 5. You come back into shot, Autumn. Okay. So this is the same score that I gave the original Mangler, but I would say that this is fractionally a more enjoyable film for me. And if I had to go back to either of these 2 films, I would absolutely choose the Mangler 2. So, definitely not the car crash I was expecting. So maybe I've got a little bit of optimism that the 3rd Mangler film might be alright as well. We will see next time. So thanks for joining me. Cheerio for now.